Muhammad is the last and final prophet of Allah. He was a mercy unto the universe. Peace and blessings be on al-Mustafa. So he began.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and the mercy of Allah be upon you, and welcome to Hadith Principles. This program is a class in which we learn about the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, and the principles by which we can ascertain their authenticity and protect them from any interpolations of any falsehoods, and appreciate the great efforts of our scholars over the last 1,400 years in protecting the Hadith Nabawi, the prophetic tradition, from any falsehoods that were attributed to it. And so we're talking about the Hadith Mawdu'a. And the Mawdu'at are not actually hadiths at all, but they're the sayings of human beings, the inventions of people that are attributed falsely to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. But many of these things are spread around the world, and people think these are hadiths, and they base their religion upon them as being a fabrication. A weak hadith, a da'if hadith, or a fabricated hadith, it is not a source of Islamic teaching. Unless there's something authentic from the Quran or hadith of that same meaning, you could not practice it. And if you do practice it, it has to be based on that source in the Quran and Sunnah, not based on this, in any case. But these are the sayings of people. But many of these things were introduced in Islamic history by people of different sects and groups that based their religion not on the Quran or hadith, but on mystic traditions or on philosophies of religions that existed, such as Zoroastrianism or dualism that existed before Islam. And so their real source was not the Sunnah. So they invented hadiths where there were none to encourage people to believe something that they did not believe because they read it in hadith. They believed it because of their mystic experiences or because of the tradition of another religion that they had believed in before Islam. So we're learning about some of these hadiths, and they must be rejected. Even if some meaning in it may be authentic, they're only the words of other people. They are not the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. So we are not allowed to teach these as hadiths of the Prophet. The ulama gathered these things to warn us about them. Now I'm going to tell you about a couple that I'm pretty sure you may have heard lately. I'm going to ask you if you have or not. The differences among my ummah is a mercy. Ikhtilaf ummati rahmah. That is, when we disagree and have differences of opinion, that's a rahmah and mercy of Allah. Anybody heard that one?
Yes.
That's popular today. Have you heard that? No? Okay. These brothers, of course, they join us every time to help in the class. Welcome, brothers. Inshallah, we're all benefiting from this, and I really appreciate your help and your being here with us. Okay, how about this one, brother? My companions, ashabi, are like the stars, a nujum.
Yes.
Whichever of them you follow, you will be guided.
Yes.
Anybody hear that one?
Yes.
So whichever sahaba you follow, they will be guided. Okay, both of these are in the mawdu'at or da'if hadith, depending on what the scholars. So the first one, ikhtilaf ummati rahmah. Ikhtilaf means we divide and differ in opinions. Of course, in Islam, we have different opinions, and the ulama have ikhtilaf. Is it really a mercy? Look at all the verses in the Holy Quran. Anybody know any verses of the Holy Quran about this subject?
وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا.
وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا. Do not be like those who divided and differed in their religions before you. So,
وَأَنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونِ.
Our ummah is one ummah, and the ummah of all the prophets is one ummah and one religion. We should not be divided. And Allah said, when they separated and divided, it was baghyan bainahum. It was because of their mutual hatred and jealousy or envy for one another. So it's basically, division is caused by our human weakness. We may be totally sincere, but we differ because our mental capability is different. Our understanding is different. So that's a weakness of human beings. And we disagree because I don't like you and you don't like me. We're different countries or different groups, and so we disagree with one another. In Islam, we accept that when the ulama disagree, they have different adillah or different evidence, or their ijtihad is different. We don't hate each other. It's all right to have different opinions. We don't disagree about usul, about the foundation of Islam. We don't disagree about the basic beliefs and basic practices of Islam. So if somebody disagrees, there aren't 5 daily prayers. That is not allowed. Or we don't fast Ramadan. Or we don't believe in the oneness of Allah. Or we don't believe that Muhammad is the last prophet. Those are our basic beliefs. All the Muslims have agreed upon by consensus. So they're universal Islamic beliefs. There is no room for disagreement. So if somebody tries to sow disunity, then that is, of course, not allowed in Islam. Those people are corrupting Islam and dividing into sects, which is not allowed, and we are not allowed to associate with those people who make sects in Islam. But the ulama from the time of the Sahaba, the companions, and the imams have different opinions about the furu', or the branches of Islam. The tree has roots and it has branches. In Islam, our roots are our basic beliefs and practices, and the branches are the details. If we want to save the tree, can we cut the roots to save the branches? No. It's the branches are sacrificed on behalf of the roots, not the other way around. And so we have to defend the unity of Islam by defending the roots of Islam. And so in Islam, there was a lot of division that happened later on, where people divided into sects. This is not rahmah, but this is punishment of Allah. It's the weakness of the human being that has led us to have baghi and hatred, that we fight each other, and our minds are limited, and we are not able to understand. And so people use this to justify blindly following their group. So that means, since ikhtilaf ummati rahmah, whatever group I'm a part of, it's okay. So I'll join whatever tariqah or sect or group I want to. It's all mercy of Allah, and that is, of course, not true. But in fact, there is no isnad for that at all. It is not a saying of the Prophet Muhammad. What about my companions, ashabi? My companions are like the nujum, like the stars. This one, Ahmad ibn Hanbal said it is da'if or mawdu'. And Ibn Abdul Barr, who is a great scholar of hadith in Spain, agreed with that. And Ibn Hazm, also a great scholar of Spain, state that not only is the isnad unsound, meaning da'if, but the hadith cannot be true for 2 reasons. One, the companions are not ma'soom. The companions are not infallible. They could make mistakes. And so if you found one of the companions disagreeing with the other companion, they themselves would see which one had evidence and proof. Some of the companions were scholars and ulama, and others were not, just like us today. Some of them were ordinary. They were good people, but they weren't scholars. And some of them were scholars, and they had hadith, and they had evidence from the Quran and Sunnah, and others were not. And so the Sahaba made mistakes. So, for example, in the fighting in the Muslim Ummah between Muawiyah and Ali, Muawiyah was mistaken. He was a Muslim. He was a companion, but he was mistaken. And it was wrong for him to do that. May Allah forgive him. But it's not right to say, oh, well, we will be on the side of Muawiyah, we'll be against Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's the 4th of the Khulafa Rashidin, and so we all will support him. And so in Islam, we're not allowed to say, oh, I will follow the opinion of one of the Sahaba, even if majority of Sahaba were against that, or the proof was against that Sahabi. So sometimes the Sahaba had different opinion, and some of them were right, and some of them were wrong. We respect all of them, but we don't make blind taqleed if they didn't agree. If all the Sahaba agreed, it was ijma, unanimous consensus, then we follow it. And if, for example, the Khulafa Rashidin had one opinion and some other Sahaba had another, the Prophet told us, follow my sunnah, alaykum bisunnati wa sunnat al-Khulafa Rashidin, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. And the great imams among the Sahaba, who were known as hadith scholars and known as fuqaha, as scholars of jurisprudence, we will follow their opinion, and we will look at their opinion first, and we'll look at the other companions secondly. Secondly, comparing it to the star is wrong because, as Ibn Hazm said, not every star will guide you in your journey. In your journey, when I look up, I'm looking for the North Star, then I'll know the directions. But not every star, if I find Mars, It's one of the stars, It's a planet. It means it's a wandering star. It's not always in the same place. North Star is always in the same place. But if I find Mars, today it's here, tomorrow it's there. If I follow Mars, it won't guide me to anything. And so the Sahaba, when you look at them, they are different. There are different levels among their knowledge. What is unanimous among them is our deen. What is unanimous? That's the consensus. And the teaching of the Khulafa Rashidin. Without doubt, they are the best. And the wives of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the 10 who are given good news of paradise, and the imams from among them who are known for their scholarship. All of them are, when there's a difference of opinion, we will prefer one over the other, and Allah knows best. And so there are many of these examples of the hadith. I think people have heard them. 1 hour of contemplation is better than 60 years of worship. So contemplating Allah is part of Islam. We contemplate and to understand Allah. Tadabbur is important. You make salat with tadabbur, thinking and contemplating, know what you're saying. Understand the dhikr that you're saying in the Quran or the dhikr that you're making. Think about your Lord. Even if you don't know all the words and the meaning, think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praise Him in your heart. That salat is the best salat. But it doesn't replace salat. But this one that I meditate or something, contemplate and think, it's better than 60 years of worship. But without doubt, the worship of an ignorant person who does not know what he's saying and doing and understand halal and haram. Of course, the person who is making tadabbur and understanding with knowledge and devotion, obviously their worship is better. But this hadith is fabricated. It's found in many of the collections of the fabricated hadiths, Tartib al-Mawdu'at, for example. And it shows that this is not an actual hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. And it implies, perhaps, that contemplation is better than salat. And of course, the best beloved action after Islam, after Tawheed, is salat. Barakallahu feek. We're going to go to a break and we'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Muhammad is the last and final prophet of Allah.
Allah the Most High and Merciful says, "Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and fair preaching." Do you want to join Huda in calling to Allah? Do you want to spread the message like the prophets did? Do you want to share in the blessings and rewards? Why not support Huda towards these noble aims? Why not sponsor a program of your choice? If you would like to help Huda in spreading the correct message of Islam, please send an email to support@huda.tv or call +2 014 327 1771 for more details, or fax +2 023 8555 251.
Muhammad is the last and final prophet of Allah.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hadith Principles. Before the break, we're talking about some examples of the mawdu'at, which are fabricated hadiths. And some of these I think you guys have heard a lot. Maybe some of them you haven't heard. Some of them are from more mystical tradition. Some of them are recited by people supporting the patriotism and nationalism. And there are all kinds of reasons that people may find something that they like in the salat. We mentioned before, like the lesser jihad and the greater jihad, or knowing, whoever knows himself knows his Lord, is a fabricated hadith. The idea that knowing yourself, the human being, if you contemplate yourself and you realize your weakness as a human being, and you look to the kawn, the universe, and its creator must not have any of those weaknesses and must be perfect in every way, far above you in knowledge and power, that will lead you to iman. I mean, that part of it is true. But this itself, it's a saying maybe from the Israeliyat, sayings of Christians or sayings of Jews or other people who entered into Islam. And it does have some aspect of truth or wisdom, but it's not a hadith of the Prophet. Peace and blessing be upon him. Any questions or comments? Or
I have a question.
Yeah.
These sayings and the other sayings of like the one you mentioned before of waking up early and sleeping early so you can wake up early. Is it okay to take by these sayings as long as you know they're just sayings? That they're just good advice?
Yeah, nothing wrong with good advice. My doctor told me, take this pill 3 times a day and then I'll be better when I was sick. And so I took his advice. If a person who has knowledge gives you advice, you take it. There are people who have wisdom in this world. Muslim ulama have given advice. The Sahaba have sayings. We have many sayings of the Sahaba full of wisdom. We have sayings of the Imams. All the Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, sayings of Muslim ulama. Today, famous people who say things that are wisdom. But we have to know they are not wise. That means if anybody says something to me and it is in agreement with Islam and not offensive in any way to the Quran or Sunnah, of course, it's good advice.
That's what I'm saying. We have to first make sure that it doesn't conflict with Islam.
Exactly. Our standard is the Quran and the Hadith that are authentic of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. Our standard are the Islamic standards. And so any wisdom in the world is full of beautiful cultures, civilizations, wisdom. There's a lot of good. And it's mixed with bad. Human beings are a mixed bag. I've never met, pure devil. Maybe there are pure devils, but I never met one. Most of us are mixture. We have good and we have bad in us. If we know ourselves, we're a mixed bag. We're not all good, we're not all bad. And most people are like that. They're not devils. They are human beings. They produce a lot of good. So look to whatever you find in the world, examine it in light of the Quran and Sunnah, take what is beneficial and good, and remove whatever is harmful or bad, will lead us astray or away from what is healthy and wholesome for us in our life and in the hereafter, inshallah.
A lot of these hadith scholars are from Iran and Iraq, and they're actually not Shia. So how did the sect Shia go into Iran and Iraq?
Well, in Muslim history, yes, none of those countries were actually Shiite countries at that time. Populations have changed since that time. And in fact, many of the Muslim scholars lived in places like what are Iran or Iraq, which are now considered like majority Shia. And this sectarian division has changed different times in the Islamic world. Different movements have come in North Africa, in the Gulf area, in Afghanistan and Persia, and they've spread, and then they have shrunk back. And so at one time, these different sects controlled large parts, North Africa, Egypt, even Mecca and Medina. At one time, groups from like the Karamata from the eastern part of what is now Saudi Arabia, the Fatimiyya, which came originally from what is now like Tunis, and conquered up to Cairo and Hijaz, many of these different groups. So in the 16th century, the Safavids conquered Iran, and the Ithna Ashari, or 12er Shia, became the state religion of Iran. In Iraq, when the Bedouin people started settling down in the late 1800s, early 1900s, around the new canals that were built in southern Iraq, they settled down near Karbala and Najaf, and they became under the influence of many of the visiting Iranian clerics who visited that area and lived around those mosques in Najaf and Karbala, which were shrines of the Ithna Asharis, and so they entered into their belief also. And so that's what happens in populations. They enter into Islam, or they enter into one group or another, and then they depart from that, and Allah knows best. I'll read you another. I don't know if anybody heard this. In Allah qabada min nur wajhihi qabda. That Allah Almighty picked up a handful from His own light, the light of Himself. And He looked at that light, and so looking in His own light, He perspired. And the perspiration dropped, and out of every drop He created a prophet. And the handful of light, He created it. It was like a brilliant star, and it was the Prophet Muhammad, and the entire world was created out of that light.
Sounds like some Christian saying or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. In the mystics, they looked, the Christianity, especially if you look at the gospel, fourth gospel of John, it's written by people of the dualistic tradition, and Allah knows best, were influenced by that. That instead of Jesus being born, He is Allah's uncreated world who descends down into the world in a mystic way and is the light of the world, etc., etc. And so they started celebrating as the birth of the Prophet Muhammad as God's light coming into the world. So this is, Allah didn't really, He was created from Allah's light. So Allah's light is from dhatihi, that is part of Allah's essence. And so you can't take any of Allah's essence away from Him, and you can't put anything into Allah and change Allah in any way. But this hadith, of course, obviously is contradictory to the Quran, to the hadith, and to the whole of Islam, and so it's obviously fabricated, even without looking at any isnad of it whatsoever. So Allah made the prophets from every drop of sweat, astaghfirullah, and He made the Prophet Muhammad from that light, that handful of light, and the whole world was created out of it. So the whole world was created out of the light of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad was present before his parents were born, and he committed the Quran to his memory before Gabriel came to him, etc., etc. So when Gabriel came to the Prophet Muhammad, he said, "You're only telling me what I already knew from before I was even born." And so Ibn Taymiyyah, of course, he writes in the Fatawa, and Ibn Kathir also writes in his Tarikh, in his history, all these things are fabricated lies. According to all the scholars, there's no doubt about that. These are fabrication. Yes, brother?
I have a question. We have these people that fabricate the hadith, and we have the people that believe in the fabricated hadith,
Yes.
and it's a big following sometimes, and sects and stuff like that. What is the best way to deal with that type of mentality?
Well, a lot of people are basically uneducated people, very simple people, and they don't maybe know better, and Allah knows best. And they will say and do things which are totally forbidden. And Allah knows what's in their hearts. But especially the leaders of those groups, we must present them evidence, but you can't attack them in a harsh way that will cause people, they love these sheikhs, they love these leaders, and you can almost say idolize them. And so if you attack them in a harsh way, then they will simply disregard what you say and curse you and call you whatever, a Wahhabi, or call you whatever they call you, and they will never listen to you. You have to talk to them in a gentle way and try to reason with them from the Quran. By the Quran, it's clear that Allah created Adam from the dust of the earth and breathed the ruh, the spirit, into him, and out of Adam created all the human beings. All of us are Abna Adam. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is Ibn Adam. He is descendant of Adam, and all of us are. And so Allah created all of them and brought forth all the human beings from the loins of Adam, and all of the Prophet. The Prophet is a descendant of Ismail, descendant of Ibrahim, descendant of Nuh, descendant of Adam, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he was created from turab, he was created from the dust of the earth. That's all of us. And of course, all of us were created by the power of Allah. All of us were created by the, Allah's wisdom and knowledge and light and rahmah and all of Allah's description. We were created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the way that Allah wanted us to be created.
Excuse me, sir. Unfortunately, many of the fabricated traditions which have just mentioned today are prevalent among Muslims. Of course, and this is not a right thing to do. How can we put an end to the spread of such fabricated traditions?
We can never put an end to it. This divisions and dispute will exist until the Day of Judgment. However, what we need to do is encourage people to authenticate hadith. That when you publish a book or an article, you must put the authentication of this hadith from the recognized scholars, or not write those hadith. So many people, even imams of masjids, they recite in the khutbah or the sermon hadith, they think it's a hadith and it is not, out of their ignorance. And so they have a duty. Authors, leaders, imams, teachers have a duty to authenticate whatever they read in a book and not simply repeat what they have heard. That's what makes a difference between you and qualifies you to lead people and educate them, that you can take the time to use these valuable tools of Islam to distinguish a sahih from a saqim, from what is good and beneficial from what is harmful and is of no benefit to the Muslim ummah. This is a great treasure we have in Islam, the authentic hadiths, and therefore we have to guard against those which have been fabricated and protect the Muslim ummah. And that is our duty, to guard against them and to convey this to people and educate them, inshallah. Inshallah, we will be part of this effort Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Muhammad is the last and final prophet of Allah. He was a mercy unto the universe. Peace and blessings be on Al-Mustafa. So he began this perfect man, sending his word across the land, leading only by his sunnah and the Quran, the word of Allah. He brought the answer to this cruel world, our beloved Prophet Muhammad.